Okay. So some of the stuff that I'm going to show today, you guys, you may be familiar with. Some of it's, I guess, can be kind of redundant. We just have several different resources that offer a different way to access this information. And I guess I think it's useful to have multiple different tools. You might like one more than the other. There's one I want to show too that we have access to that's actually free. And I know that can be useful, for after graduation, for student doctors after they graduate, if they don't have access to our UpToDate or our Lexicomp anymore. So it's just kind of good to have different tools available. But thank you guys for joining. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And so today I wanted to talk about different drug databases that we have access to. And these could be used for faculty for teaching pharmacology, or if these could be used as more of a clinical reference tool. I'm not sure how with student doctors on clinical rotations if they're allowed to use things like this, but it's just useful information for clinical practice and for teaching pharmacology. So some of these probably sound familiar, but one of the first resources I wanted to talk about is Lexicomp. Lexicomp is made by Wolters Kluwer. That's the same vendor that, or Ovid. It's the same vendor that makes UpToDate that we get our LWW resources from. So there's several different things under that umbrella of that vendor. And you can find this in a couple different ways. I don't have, if you're familiar with the LUCOM library page, and you go down to databases, you'll see that we have a lot of commonly accessed databases here. I think I'm going to add a link to Lexicomp because I know a lot of faculty are using it. But it's okay if you don't see it here. If you're familiar with our research guide, if you click on the research guide link, it'll take you to where we organize all of our electronic databases. And there's a tab up here that says A to Z databases. And if you click on that, you'll see alphabetical lists, and you can find Lexicomp right there. But just some things to be familiar with. Lexicomp probably looks familiar if you used UpToDate, because this is what UpToDate looks like. And there's Lexicomp. So obviously they're kind of under that same umbrella. But this is more specifically not just a clinical point of care reference tool, but specifically on drug information. And there's everything. You can find drug interactions, drug ID, if you want to know what the actual pill or tablet looks like. You can use this resource for a medical calculator, also patient education if you need like an explanation of a statin drug that you're prescribing in lay terms for a patient. You can find that information here. Something that's kind of interesting to me, I'm not really familiar with. I haven't used it at all, really. But in preparing for this, I was looking at this Tristel's IV compatibility, and I guess this is a way you can actually see which kind of drugs I guess you can put together intravenously. Maybe if you're a clinical faculty member, you're more familiar with this. It was new to me. It's kind of interesting that we have access to it, though. But there's an interaction tool where you just put in one drug name, and it'll tell you, like if I were to say, I don't know, Crestor, I can see things you don't, contraindications that you wouldn't do along with those. And I guess it grades how well that medication can be combined with another medication. So interactions, IV compatibility, drug ID is kind of neat because you can actually find the imprints of what will be on each, what each pill or caplet will look like. And again, I mentioned that there's calculators available in this resource. And something kind of neat too is you can get more clinical tools here. And you can find toxicology indexes, clinical links, but also you'll see here it links to UpToDate. And this is something I like to point out because there's a couple different ways you can access the Lexicomp drug information. Lexicomp actually, UpToDate being from the same resource as Ovid, you'll see drug interactions is also here. This is pulling the drug information in UpToDate is coming from the Lexicomp database. So if you already have the UpToDate app on your phone, you can actually use that to access the drug information from the Lexicomp database within the UpToDate resource. So I know that seems kind of redundant, but it's just another way you can access the same information if you're already familiar with the UpToDate app on your phone. And also the reason that can be useful is because there is a mobile, you have access as a student doctor or a faculty member at LUCOM, or even an adjunct faculty member or preceptors have access to the UpToDate app on your phone for free. And there are a limited, on the other hand, Lexicomp has a mobile app that's just the drug database, but there's a limited number of licenses that we have access to for the mobile app for Lexicomp. I want to say it's like only 25 for the university. We could conceivably get more if we paid for them, but right now that's what our limit is. And so I know, like, for instance, Dr. Phipps was interested in the Lexicomp app, so we were able to get him set up with the mobile app license for that application. But just keep in mind that there's a limited number of licenses for the mobile app specifically of Lexicomp. Dynamed is another resource that I've tried to talk to people about and get people interested in. This is the main competitor for the UpToDate resource from Ovid. Dynamed is made by EBSCO, but as a main competitor, it's going to have a lot of the same information, and you'll see there's a drugs A to Z database here. And I've gotten some questions from faculty about IBM Micromedex access. This is the only official way that we have access to the IBM Micromedex drug database, but it's very similar. It's alphabetical. I'm not even sure what I'm not sure what these drugs are, but a lot of the same information, just in a different format. Pharmacokinetics, mechanisms of action you have access to. You can find dosing information, toxicology, and again, you know, if you're using this in a clinical setting and you need patient education information, you can find that here as well. You can also search for drugs directly in the search box in Dynamed, just like you can in UpToDate, like we were talking about. But I'm not aware of another way that we officially have access to IBM Micromedex. I did get a question about that, and so I was just curious and kind of looking around online. And oddly enough, with a quick DuckDuckGo or Google search, I found IBM Micromedex, the full site online, and I'm not sure why this is open. We don't pay for access to this. When I was looking at this the other day, it looks like maybe the University of Vermont or something has this. So I wouldn't rely on this, but just so you know, if you're interested in finding the actual IBM Micromedex, it's pretty easy to find, and I can send the link to you guys if you're interested in this. But again, I wouldn't rely too heavily on it because I'm not sure why it's accessible, but it's there. But that same drug database information is where Dynamed is pulling all the drug database information from. So just like we saw in Lexicomp and the other resources, there's medical calculators, drug interactions, where you put in one drug and another drug to see how they interact, whether they're contraindications. So that's one resource that we have access to. AccessPharmacy is a resource that is newer to us. It's within the McGraw-Hill umbrella of resources. We already had access to the Access Medicine resource, which a lot of people are familiar with, but now we have access to this resource as well, AccessPharmacy. I talked about this a little bit in another Teams video. There's a recording of it on the research guide. But just kind of reiterate, you have drug database information, drug monographs available in the AccessPharmacy resource. Again, this might be more targeted to teaching or pharmacology faculty, not quite so much as a clinical setting, but you can find trade names, generics, drug classes. Again, I guess there is patient handouts, so if you wanted to use this to find information about drugs in lay terms that patients could understand, you can find that there. But I think it's kind of cool that you can search by trade name or generic. But again, just so let's see, it kind of aggregates a lot of information that you had to go to different areas to find in Lexicomp. So like, whereas Lexicomp had the drug ID to find the imprint on the side of the pill, when I find the drug, I've got all this information here that pulls up clinical pharmacology, adverse reactions. There's the imprint of what it looks like, brand names that are available. So it's kind of pulling from several different places to put everything in one spot. And again, you can search by drug in here as well. One of the last things I wanted to show, all of these resources we purchase access to. So as long as you are a faculty member, student doctor, even an adjunct faculty or a preceptor, which have adjunct faculty appointments to LUCOM, you'll have access to all of these resources. But if you find yourself after graduation or in another situation where you're no longer teaching at LUCOM no longer a student and graduated. On this research guide that we've built, and again, if you go to the LUCOM library page, you'll find the link under databases for research guide. You scroll down here and we've got, you might be familiar with featured resources and quick links, but if you look down here, there's this Merck manual search widget that we've embedded into the research guide. And this is pretty cool because this is a free resource. And this is available to anybody that wants to use it. It's not, we don't pay for access to this. And there's consumer level and professional level information. So you can actually choose the professional radio button and search for a drug name. Or if you actually click on this Merck manuals here, it'll link to the page and you can choose professional or consumer version. But if I go to the professional version, I have drug info available here. I can find pill identifier just like I could in Lexicomp to find the imprint. They suggest commonly searched drugs, but there's drug name by brand name and by generic. I can search, I can find, let's see, I'm not sure what any of these are, but you'll see pulling that up, they've aggregated all this information. And again, I mentioned how a lot of these things are redundant. This is coming from Lexicomp, but this is a free resource. So Lexicomp's a paid resource that we have access to directly to, and also through UpToDate that we pay for. But if in another situation, if you don't have access to those paid resources, this is a freely available resource. It's got dosing information, medical calculators, just like available in Lexicomp, clinical practice guidelines, contraindications, all this stuff. It more aggregates the information, kind of like the way that the AccessPharmacy resource does. So again, some of this stuff, I'm worried it might seem a little redundant, but I guess it's good to have more tools than less tools. And there's different ways to access all these things. All the links for the different databases that we talked about, you can find some here under databases on the LUCOM library page, like AccessPharmacy, Dynamed, and UpToDate, which links to that Lexicomp database. And then you can find, of course, links to all of our electronic resources, including Lexicomp, and the A to Z databases on the research guide. So that's mostly what I wanted to show today. And again, I mentioned the Micromedex main page. I can show you how to get to this. I'm not 100% sure why this is openly available. We don't pay for access to this, but there it is. But again, we have access to this through Dynamed, and for the time being, we can also access the main resource. So thank you guys for your time, and as always, I've recorded this team session, and I'm going to put it up onto the research guide. And if you go to the research guide main page, underneath brief how-to sessions, we're building a library of these recordings so you can find any others that you might have interest to as well. So thank you guys for your time. I hope you guys have a good rest of the day, and please let me know if you have any questions or anything else I can help with for these resources.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you,
Sure
Rob.
thing.
Thank you. Thank you.